Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Truth Wanted. I am your host, Objectively Dan. This is the live call-in show that happens every single week, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time, where we talk to you about what you believe and why. This is a live call-in show, so please, if you want to talk to me and my special guest, you can do that. The number for that is below. It is 512-991-9242, or you can go to your computer and visit tiny.cc/calltw to call into the show right now. Truth Wanted is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And of course, every single week, I always have a special guest. This week is no different. It is Zachary Shedd from my kind of alma mater, UTSA. Zachary Shedd, welcome to Truth Wanted.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Zachary. Zachary, you were actually briefly on this program before. Last year, we did our first in-person event since the pandemic, which was a live show at the University of Texas at San Antonio. That was in part hosted by the Secular Student Alliance there. And you got to be on stage with me along with a couple of other of your friends at the SSA. And we had a really good time. I really enjoyed it. So yeah. You had contacted us again about doing any further collaborations. And we were like, hey, sure, why not? Because we like talking about the SSA and what you guys are doing. I used to be a part of the SSA briefly when I was in college. It's awesome. It's cool. So Zachary, welcome to the show.
All right. Well, once again, thanks for having me on. Zach, I'm a physics major at UTSA, but I always say I'm more proud of my philosophy minor. It's always more interesting to me. Plan to become a teacher, and I am the secretary at the UTSA SSA branch. The SSA as an organization is, I don't know how to even put it succinctly. We do lots of stuff. We usually have discussions every week. Sometimes we'll spice it up with an activity. One time we had a viewing of God's Not Dead, so we could laugh at it the whole time.
I think every SSA in the country has at least one viewing of God's Not Dead, because we did too. We watched all three of them.
Oh God!
Yeah.
Okay, I understand.
Worse over time.
I gotta say. I understand. Yeah, I understand one. But why would you put yourself through three? I mean, come on.
I don't know.
The atheist professor is bad enough, but then you get to like Christian nationalism, just diet down for evangelicals. That's not my thing.
Yeah, it does take a turn for the worse, like a very hard turn for the worse. Like the first one is like, oh, it's like The Room. It's like, it's fun to watch because it's bad. And then the other ones are like, oh, this is just a propaganda film. There isn't very much good content here at all. But hey, Zachary, thanks again for coming on. And yeah, I love that you're also passionate about the Secular Student Alliance. I think there's a lot of people that wish they had secular student alliances at their own colleges and high schools, which is another thing that SSAs have been doing. I think it's great to have a place for young people to come together to express, one, their non-belief, their skepticism, but also have a place where they can feel normal and also feel like they can have like-minded folks with them, because a lot of folks who are in the SSA, of course, some of them were born atheists, some of them were born skeptics, but a lot of them come from religious backgrounds. A lot of them come from families that don't accept them from who they are. A lot of them come from families that don't accept their sexualities or gender identities, and I think the SSA does a really good job with helping with that, right?
Yeah, we do. And we also advertise we try to advertise more as a secular organization rather than an atheist organization,
Right,
because
right.
one, there's all sorts of secular branches. You have atheists, you have agnostic, and a lot of people are turned off from one branch or another. But also, it is about our SSA, at least. We do focus a little bit more on that separation between church and state, and that is for everybody. That's not just an atheist thing. That's not
Right.
just an agnostic thing. That is an everyone thing. In fact, we had. Oh, how did I forget his name? He wrote a book, The Founding Myth. Dr. Or Andrew Seidel, not doctor, I don't remember, but Andrew Seidel, and we had him on as one of our activities. He held a small seminar on the book. But yeah, we try to advertise as that, and it's weird. I'll tell you, our semester just started up again, and I went back on campus, and I forget how many religious groups there are.
Oh yeah.
It's mind-boggling. We actually have
let me tell you.
yeah,
Let me tell you. Okay, let's break this down, because so for those of you who don't know, one of the reasons why we chose UTSA also was because that was also the school that I went to, and because I don't know what it is. UTSA it's a state school, right? It's the University of Texas at San Antonio. So University of Texas is such a big system. They actually have multiple schools in different cities. So you have University of Texas in Austin, right? Which is just called UT. You've got University of Texas San Antonio, University of Texas El Paso. I think Corpus Christi too. Like, they got it all over the place. It is wild.
Oh, never mind. I was thinking of another college, but yeah, they're everywhere. But
okay. So this is a state school. It is not a religious school. Okay, it's a publicly funded institution. Has one of the highest rates of religious groups of any school, public school, like in the state. It's kind of wild how many, particularly Christian groups, are on campus. I was part of one as well while I was there. I wish I could have been a part of the UTSA SSA at the time. I ended up switching schools and doing a bunch of stuff. But yeah, it is wild, the environment there, right?
It's amazing. And sometimes I've seen groups of the same denomination, but in two separate groups. It's wild. And we actually have a cult on campus. If you've ever heard of a can car, it's sort of like a diet Scientology.
Oh no. That's a different cult than what I was thinking of that was on campus. But okay, there might be more than one,
Which one were you thinking? There's a lot of cults on. Which one were you thinking of?
So the one that I was thinking of was the Elohim cult that was there. I remember seeing them. They I was just hanging, they have different booths and stuff on campus. I remember walking up one time like, hey, we want to show you a video and stuff. It's like, okay, cool. We put these headphones on, and they're like, God is actually multiple gods and angels in the Bible, and this is what they refer to as Elohim, which is plural. And it's like, oh, okay, you guys are one of those types of groups.
Yeah,
so lots of different groups, right?
They're still here. Elohim is still here, and also have people that come onto campus. We have yet to see any Jehovah's Witnesses, but we have at least on a good day, we probably have 3 sets of Mormons. And I'm not kidding. I'll be walking down campus. Okay, here come the women. All right. And here's the first pair. And then here's the second pair. And one will be sitting down and 2 will be walking around. And there is at least 1 pair walking around at all times. It's like there are so many groups. It's staggering.
It's really funny. But okay, so let's talk about this, right? So Zachary, you're what the adults call Gen Z. All right, you're a Gen Z, okay? I am in the middle. I refer to myself as a zillennial. Okay, I just turned 27. I'm kind of on the in between. Okay, but you're starkly Gen Z. Okay,
I am.
The argument has been put out here. Okay, that organizations like the SSA really don't matter. It really doesn't exist because the culture is tending to go not towards atheism, but sort of a religious pluralism. More so than any other generation in American history, right? Like, there's more people that are sort of diversifying into more obscure faith traditions, but also non-Christian traditions that have been on an uptick. I mean, and that was kind of true even when I was in college still, and it's probably even more true today. So what do you think about when people talk about Gen Z, like, oh, they don't actually care about religion, or when they do care about religion, it's not organized religion. Like when you hear stuff like that in your experience, what does that make you think?
Well, I've never really given too much thought to it. I mean,
Mm,
I've known that religion has been on the downturn for
yeah,
years, and I know Gen Z is the least religious demographic. I mean, generations are kind of arbitrary, but
right.
it is a continuous flow. The younger you get, the less religious you're likely to be,
Yeah.
uh, and so it's like I don't really see that as a bad thing. I
Mm-hmm.
do see that as a good thing. At least the way I think about it, it's good that people are not in more fundamentalist groups, or there are fewer people to be in fundamentalist groups. I think
Yeah.
that's where some of the major problems lie. Uh, as to why people are becoming less religious, I don't remember what the causes were, but I do think overall it is a good thing.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I mean, no. Yeah. I agree with you. That's a good thing.
Mhm.
But in part to my question too, right? Like, what does that mean for an organization such as yourself, that like promotes kind of these ideas of secularism? Do you think that makes interesting challenges for you to operate as an organization today than say what it was like 20 years ago?
I honestly think it makes it a little bit easier
Mm,
because the people that come up to talk to us are usually either already non-religious or they're one of the church groups.
mm,
The Because people who are moderately religious are pretty solid where they are. Excuse me, they don't really lie in the extremes. They don't want to go talk to people. And so whenever we have, I think it does make it easier that we have a larger non-religious body,
yeah.
and people that are more open to religious pluralism, and atheism as not being completely immoral. It's a
Yeah.
wonderful thing. It does make it a little bit easier because people don't carry that baggage with them when they approach our table, and there are
Right.
more of them. So I do think that it's a lot easier now. But
Right.
this is speaking from my personal experience. You'll have to talk to Clara on that one.
Right. And Claire, of course, president of the Secular Student Alliance in San Antonio, really awesome person, has gotten to come up in studio for some shows too, which has been great.
Mhm.
But yeah, so like I remember when I was on campus, like there being a lot of Christians, like there were people that were preaching on campus. I remember that a lot. I remember there being the occasional protest about something or another happening. Like, what do you, as an organization now, do you see a lot of pushback just like existing, or do people mostly like leave you alone?
Well, I don't think we've actually, we had some issues setting up the ballroom, for the thing. That was some iffy stuff that I'm not going to get into.
Right.
Besides that, we've had a pretty, I think we've had a pretty easy time. Um, we do see protests still, because of some thing passed in 2018 by the Texas legislature. Now, like the anti-abortion groups can come up on campus with their signs. That's not fun.
Yeah.
But they usually get shut down pretty quick by both people on campus, and there are other orgs that use the time to distribute abortion information. And, oh,
Oh
we're having
wow.
a march this day. Yeah, I'm in another group, and we have a like fast response time. Whenever we see them, we can go print out flyers and start distributing. So they're just giving us free press.
Mm,
But overall, we haven't really faced pushback. We still see the street preachers every once in a while. But no, we haven't seen, I don't think we've seen any real pushback from these types of groups.
that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I remember, again, just going back to my days on campus, like when you like there are days where they'll have, events where they're showing off all of the groups. And again, like you go into a gymnasium full of every religious group you can think of. And then I do remember the one SSA booth just right there in the corner.
Mhm.
You guys just kind of stick out. Like it's so funny because like again, at the time I remember first seeing it, I was of course a Christian, and I wonder what my life would have been like if I had spent more time at the UTSA SSA.
Mhm.
That's a little alternate universe that I'll never get to experience, but that's okay because you're here now with me, Zachary, and we get to talk about some of the cool stuff that you're doing. About yourself too, Zachary, just so the audience gets to know a little bit more about you. Let's talk
Mhm.
about you. I think you were previous. You come from a Christian family, correct?
So my grandparents are very Christian. My parents are a lot more open, but my grandparents are very Christian. So the way I actually use myself as the sort of religious case study. Whenever people say the word of God is written on your heart, right? I say, well, I grew up not necessarily being part of church. I went to church every once in a while. It was rare, and it was mostly for like, okay, let's satiate the grandparents. But I grew up with the knowledge of Christianity, but I have been an atheist since as far back as I can remember. I don't understand how you can claim that when I myself have been irreligious since forever. I mean, the first time I thought about it, I was like, I guess I don't believe. And so it's kind of funny. It was even funnier. Apparently, my parents tell me that one time they took us to one of the church, I think it was one of the picnics nearby, and they got a new preacher. And he was not a very friendly preacher. And so we ended up never going back to that church again. So it's like, I didn't really grow up religious, or I didn't grow up religious. And so, like I said, I use that as a case study because it's a fun little argument to say, everybody?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, how do your parents feel? I mean, obviously they're open, but like, what do they feel about you being a participant in the SSA, or do they even know about your activities?
Oh, they know about it. Yeah. I make it clear. There's whenever there's like preachers on campus, they're aware, as I am, of like, this is going to sound extreme at first, but rising domestic terrorist threats. And the main thing they're concerned for is my safety. Yes. And I'm aware of this too. I've been doing research on this stuff for the past 2 years for various classes. But that's their main concern, is safety.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. For those of you who don't live in America, we do have kind of a school shooting problem. It is a thing that happens here in this country, unfortunately. I don't think there's been any threats at UTSA that I'm aware of, but
I think we're scot-free so far.
Yeah, but that nobody expects it. So yeah, I guess that's true. And yeah, there is kind of like the big, I saw this. It was Governor Ron DeSantis just put something out, I think it was today, saying that his agenda was to get rid of woke ideology on college campuses by the end of 2023 or whatever. Like it was something along those lines. And first of all, using the term woke in official government messaging is hilarious, but also it's just like everybody has takes on what should be happening on like a college campus, right? Everybody has these ideas, and I just think it's so funny when these perspectives come out. I mean, it's never from actual people who attend the campuses or who work on these campuses. It's always some guy who either has never been to college or hasn't been to college in like 50 years, right? So I don't know what the deal is there, but like, in your experience, right, politically, what's going on at UTSA? What's going on campuses? Do you feel, as a secular person, overall, that things are just fine and dandy? Do you think that there's a lot of pushback? Like I know, like you said, the SSA has been pretty okay, but like, when you talk with people, when you in your anecdotal experience, Zachary, what is it like?
So being on campus, there are some hyper conservative groups. There's a whole organization that exists around being in the post-Roe generation. That's what they call themselves. And there's Students for Life, Students for Christ, and we also have a TPUSA outcropping there.
Oh yeah,
that's not fun. Oh yeah. Oh no, they're sort of chastised anytime, because they have their white, they put out a whiteboard. They have someone hold a whiteboard, and they'll have a yes and no question or a 1 or 2 option question, and they'll try to frame it in the conservative way. So they make sure like the liberal answer or the progressive answer sounds ridiculous. It always gets chosen. So I think that for conservative groups on campus, I don't think we've really faced any issues. I mean, there are these groups that try surviving, because even though we do live in a conservative state, San Antonio is a very progressive place. And so all of these conservative organizations try showing up, and they do have large memberships, but nobody likes them. It's like every time I see pass by, it's like everybody
really funny.
Yeah, it's
I would
funny.
love to see that.
like they come to Texas in the expectation that, hey, we're going to get some members. Yeah, nobody likes you. And it's like one time we had a street preacher. He brought out his sign. It's like homo sex is sin or whatever, and he got shouted off campus. He was just flooded, and he had to leave because he couldn't talk anymore.
I
and
love
it is
that.
It's the whole thing they make is like, oh, it's free speech. Yeah, we
That's
have
awesome.
some too, and we're going to use it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Oh, that fills my heart with joy. I'm glad you told me that story. Okay, here's some fun Dan lore. Okay. When I was in high school, I was a part of the Young Republicans Club. Okay.
Oof.
So revealing some things about myself. But at the time, I believe Turning Point USA we're just getting started. And I don't remember, I think somebody came to my school, but I got some handouts for it. And this was the deal at the time. I don't know if they still do this, but the idea was you can send them essays about what it's like to be a conservative at your school, and they might publish it on your website. And it was like, oh, do you get any money for this? Oh, no, you don't. They'll just, publish your works for you. It's like, okay, well, I'm not interested. Why the fuck would I write write a whole essay for you and pay me? I'm sorry. Do the people who submit opinions to the New York Times or whatever not get paid for stuff? Like, come on, like that's like how it goes. So I don't know.
It's like,
Even back then they were grifting children into doing work for them, which is awesome. Very cool.
And it's we've got, like, that's the other thing is we see, at least on campus, there is a huge intersection between conservative and Christian. And that persecution complex tends to carry over.
You don't say, Zachary. You don't say.
I think that persecution complex tends to carry over. And so while they're not overtly being silenced, as long as they're not spewing hate speech, they still try to play into that as much as possible. It's like, oh, they're hating on us. But man,
of course.
they're hard to deal with too. But
of
it's
course.
just,
Well, look, folks at home, if you are a Christian or if you're an atheist or if you believe in something else entirely, we would love to talk to you. We've got a couple of lines open, but we are going to get to calls here in just a second. Again, the number is on the screen, or you can call through your computer at tiny.cc/calltw, and we would love to talk to you. But before we get to call, Zachary, I have to get started with thanking the patron of the week. Every single week, I always give a shout out to somebody that donates on Patreon. So thank you to everybody that donates on Patreon. But of course, we always want to give that special shout out. And this week's patron of the week is going to be Ayame. Thank you, Ayame, for donating on Patreon. And of course, thank you to everybody that donates. You guys rock. Just as a reminder, I am a volunteer with the atheist community of Austin. And so I do not personally receive any of that, nor do any of the other volunteers. That helps go towards the organization and the activities therein. So thank you so much for doing that. And with that out of the way, I think we should get to some calls. What do you think, Zachary?
Sounds good with me. Let's get him on the line.
Okay, cool. So we have some interesting topics from some folks. So if I don't get to you right away, folks, please stay on the line because I want to talk to y'all. But I think first we'll start with Marina, who is calling in from Texas. Marina, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hi. I just wanted to kind of discuss the issue of people having a lot of things happen in their favor and then associating that with God working in their life and working for the good of all who love him. So the reason I'm asking this is because I'm an agnostic atheist. My wife is a Christian. I won't give away her identity or denomination, but she really believes that since a lot of good things are happening in our lives right now, even though I am transgender, and this has been very hard for her, especially with her own convictions. She thinks that God is being very caring and loving to her and working for her good. And even I see, wow, everything's just really working well for both of us, for my transgender care and for her provision and her job. And people are being really good to her and me. And, I could understand why people might be led to think that maybe maybe God is showing us some of that extra goodness and working in and out of our lives, you know. And I
Right.
just wanted to hear your guys' thoughts. What would a skeptic think, or what does it mean to be a skeptic in this situation?
Well, it's a great question. The term for this kind of motivated reasoning is what it's called in psychology, right? In philosophy, it would be post hoc rationalization, right? So it's this idea that you have a predetermined conclusion, right? And you're motivated
Right.
to find evidence for the reasoning for that, right? It's the same reason why folks like young Earth creationists can be sometimes so hell bent on the idea that the Earth is 6,000 years old, is because that's what they heard when they were 5 or 10, and when they're adults, they want to figure out how they can keep that belief going, right? The problem with this idea that God shows us special favor in that you look at the good things in your life as evidence for that is that that kind of reasoning has to work both ways, right? So if God shows you particular favor, I guess the children that just died in Ukraine from the recent missile strikes were really hated by God, or God just doesn't care, right? So that sounds really
Yeah,
awful,
that
and
would
that
be
sounds really
problematic.
bad. But when you say it out loud, it's like, oh, well, wait, well, God has a plan, maybe, right? Maybe there's some sort of extra thing, and I guess the plan involves, children dying through military, assaults. But like, like it works for us because we can live in our own little bubbles of the world and we see things going our way and we're able to kind of rationalize it. But on a global level, that kind of reasoning just doesn't work, right? And if it just gets more complicated. There's Christians that have these kinds of responses to the problem of evil and stuff. Obviously, I don't find that very convincing. But like you have to think that it cuts both ways, right? If you're willing to see the good things in your life, what does that mean for the not good things? Or what other actors are involved? Is it Satan? Is it demons? Is it angels? I mean, it could be anything, right? It could be the man on the moon that has some sort of
Right.
influence, right? But anyway, that's my initial
Yeah.
thoughts. Zachary, what do you think?
Yeah, that was basically that's about what I was going to say. We have evolved in such a way that we recognize correlation. When we eat a berry and it hurts us, like, oh, probably shouldn't eat that berry. It's wired into us, but that can be abused. But that's really only half the picture, because if something bad happens, like Dan said, it's like that reasoning should go both ways, but it doesn't. And that's just my bias, is like, oh, well, faith can cloud your reasoning in that way. Because my greatest criticism of that line of reasoning is you start with the conclusion of God and you give premises that lead to that conclusion, but you can never not have that conclusion, because that's where you start with.
Right.
I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Marina?
Is this kind of like confirmation bias? Is this what we're talking about too?
Yeah, absolutely. Confirmation bias. Well, so like confirmation bias, I'm trying to think of the specific definition, but the term I was thinking was post hoc rationalization, which is that specifically means like you have a predetermined conclusion for something like that. A confirmation bias is related, but I think that's more like what's a good example? Like you take medicine when you are feeling sick and you really like this medicine and you start to feel good for it, and so but actually it might be a placebo, but you don't know that. I don't know. I think there is a difference there, but point is, it is related concepts, right? So
yeah, because I had never heard like a different term used for this kind of thing, but you say motivated
reasoning. Motivated reasoning is sometimes used in psychology, right? To describe a similar thing, like post hoc rationalization is the philosophy term when you're talking about arguments. Motivated reasoning is similar, but can also, I think, refer to psychological states that can influence you as well. Again, I'm talking out my ass. I'm not an expert on any of this, but I'm just an observer of human beings, right? And when you talk to people, you pick up on some of this terminology.
Yeah, see, this is good, because this is the kind of thing that convinced me to become a Christian for about 20 years of my life. And I basically postponed my own transitional needs for that span of time. You know, thinking that God just didn't want me to do that, and you know, relying on His grace and His power to you know not transition, and then proclaim that boldly to other people. And once I started deconstructing, it just all fell apart. And then I'm like, wow, I've spent all this time following and you know, like wasting my life on something that was most likely not even true to begin with, let alone do we have any concrete evidence. And it's like, I just kind of feel this urgency to get the ball rolling and not waste my life any longer. You know,
man, I really appreciate you sharing that, Marina, because I think I've had definitely a similar experience. Obviously, you know, I'm not trans, so I didn't, you know, but the things that held me back, for example, like, pursuing, you know, relationships with people that I otherwise would have because they didn't have the same religious beliefs that I did, or, spending my summers working at summer camps, preaching the gospel to children because I thought that was a good thing to do instead of enjoying my early 20s in the summer. I, you know, like a lot of college kids do, right? I didn't have a lot of those experiences. I didn't drink alcohol at all, like when I was in college, you know, like not that I necessarily needed to, but like I do feel that sense of like missing out a bit, right? And wanting to like, you know, gain something that you perceived as a loss. I guess what I would encourage though, as I'm hearing you, is just something that I've come to a conclusion for myself, is that you wouldn't be the person that you are today without your life experiences, right? And for better or worse, they do help inform you and help you, not only in yourself in your own life, but you can, as you're talking to me right now, make a difference in other people's lives. Like, I'm glad Zachary's a part of the SSA. I'm super happy for him that he gets to have that experience that I didn't get to have. And I hope for generations even younger than that. I think like what we can do in our station in life, as people who wish that we missed out, is at least give those experiences to other people, right? Like, if there's one thing we can do, I guess that's the thing we can do. But anyway, that's just me expressing my thoughts on that. Zachary, do you have any thoughts?
I think that pretty much sums me up as well.
Yeah. What else did you have for us, Marina? Anything else on that, or did we kind of give you everything you wanted?
You know, I would love to talk with you guys forever, but I think you guys have been great, and I would really have to fish for anything else. I'm going to have to chew on all that for a while. And thank you guys so much. Really.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much
Thanks for calling in.
And appreciate your honesty with that. And it's hard. It's so hard when you have a partner that thinks a certain way about things. And like everybody, you know, people in your life, right? They're going to think differently about stuff, and that's fine. But like some stuff's bigger than others. You know what I mean? I don't know how big of a deal this is for Marina. They didn't really go into it, but it was a big enough deal for them. They thought that they should call in and talk to us about it, right? So I don't know. That's tough when your partner can think differently from you. I've definitely had to deal with that. How about you, Zach? You ever had to deal with that?
Just a little bit from grandparents. I mean, I did tell them I was an atheist. That did not go over well.
Oh, really?
It wasn't the worst thing ever. But for a short time afterwards, I could definitely see the look of disappointment in my grandpa's eyes. It's like, and that's the other thing, is the Christian perspective is, hey, you're going to hell because you don't believe. And if you look at the view of atheists as morally capable people, on the conservative side, it's not great. So I did deal with that, but it's sort of come to pass, and we sort of live with it now.
Yeah, coming out to family is really hard, especially when they don't understand or support what you can do. And Marina was even talking about this, right? Marina was saying their Christian identity led them to speak out. It sounded like against being trans is what it sounded like. I might be misinterpreting that, but at least they couldn't recognize that identity for themselves because of that ideology that was given to them probably prior, right? That they felt like they had to justify. And like every single trans person I know, okay, like every single one is so happy that they made the transition, right? Like yes, there are people who are quote unquote detransers, right? But if you notice, even within that sub community, There are people who that like a lot of them will still say, yes, this decision wasn't right for me, but it should be right for other people, right? Everyone should have the right to have that experience for themselves. And unfortunately, fundamentalist Christianity just doesn't allow for that kind of thinking. So anyway, glad we got to have that conversation. I want to move on to our next caller, but first, I want to tell you guys about how you can support the show. Of course, I already mentioned before, you can donate on the Patreon. It's tiny.cc/PatreonTW to do that. If you want to get your name shouted out on the show, you should definitely go on there. A couple different tiers on that Patreon as well. You can also support the show by becoming a member. You get emojis in the chat if you do that. Your name gets highlighted in the chat, and you become immune to the chat timeouts. And you can do that for as little as 99 cents per month. That's not a lot. We're not asking for a lot, guys. 99 cents. That's an app. That's an app in the App Store. Okay. Remember, like when they used to have the beer drinking apps on your iPhone, that was like 99 cents back then. It's the same thing. Same thing here. But if 99 cents is too much for you, then how about no cost to you? Because you can do this too. If you shop on Amazon, you can support the ACA at no cost if you visit tiny.cc/AmazonSmileACA and designate the Atheist Community of Austin as your selected charity. And Amazon will donate a portion of their profit directly to the ACA. So that's another thing to consider. Although I heard recently that they're going to be getting rid of Amazon Smile, I think. I don't know how soon, but I did hear that. So you should definitely take advantage of that if you still want to support the ACA before that goes away. I don't know when, but we'll keep talking about it until we don't have that option anymore. But anyway, we have some more folks who want to talk to us. This is an interesting one. I want to put a trigger warning on this call at first because it looks like we are going to be talking about the topic of suicide and potentially self-harm. So just letting folks know that this is a topic usually I don't always get to talk about beforehand because I don't know exactly where people are going, but looks like we got a little bit of confirmation. We're talking to Enoch, who's calling in from Pennsylvania. Enoch, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hey, super happy to be talking with Zach and SubjectivelyDan.
That's right. That's right. Laugh it up. Laugh it up. It happened one time. The crew thought they were funny, and they'll never let it go, huh? SubjectivelyDan. Still happening. What, like a year later? Ridiculous. Anyway, I hope you guys get better jokes in 2023. That's my resolution for you. Anyway, Enoch, I'm just kidding. But welcome to the show. How's it going?
Hey, it's going good. So yeah, Dan, I don't know if you remember me, but I actually called in like a couple of years ago to the Atheist Experience. It was you and Matt. It was my first time calling in. I was a Christian back then. And about over a year ago, I became an atheist. I've been an atheist for a while now.
Oh my God.
So listening to you guys.
That's awesome.
Was a huge part of it.
What?
Yeah.
That's that's
actually
that's
Enoch,
so great. I know what you're talking about. That was 2020, February 2020. I know that because that was right before. That was like during the snowstorm here in Austin. I remember that too. Oh my goodness, Enoch. Well, welcome to the fold. You get your atheist card club in the mail pretty soon. So look for that. Congratulations, though. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. It's not often that people tell me I was a direct part of their experience. So props to you for figuring some stuff out. So man, I hope you talk about that more because I'm definitely interested in that. But you had a different topic you wanted to talk about, right?
Yeah. So I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this. I've been meaning to call in for a while, but like ever since I became an atheist, obviously a lot of my views have changed a lot.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I've changed positions on is the topic of suicide. And like you said, I know it's like a hot button, and lots of people lots of people don't want to talk about this. But the basic. So I think I've come to believe that it's morally permissible, and the basic argument is that first and foremost, nobody gets a choice to come into the world. We're born and we're forced into the world, whether we like it or not. And so I think trying to force somebody to stay in the world against their will is not right. I think that would be that shouldn't be a thing. I think if somebody wants to leave, they should be allowed, especially when you consider that it's their life and they didn't even get a choice to come into this world. So that's basically like the most basic outline, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. Like, is there something I'm missing, or like, is there something to reconsider? Or, yeah.
So this is very interesting because I feel like your transition, as you commented on, infers also a change of other views, right? And like the right to die, I've noticed is probably a surprisingly common one, because in Christian theology, historically, suicide is considered a sin in some ways. Like suicide is something that you shouldn't do. There's a reason why the term, if you've ever thought about this, the term is called committing suicide, and that is because in European law, right, it's actually considered against the law in some circumstances. It really was. So it's this interesting conundrum that we find ourselves in, because if you are an American and you believe people have a right to their own bodies and a right to their own lives, do they have a right to end their own lives? It is a tricky and thorny thing. Most people that are advocates for right to die express this idea that, well, if you are, say, 100 years old and you've been given a cancer diagnosis or something, you should be given the right to end your life how you see fit. And I think like maybe 99% of right to life advocates are going to agree with it. Now, I should also say that in countries where a right to die is legal, it's usually not as simple as, okay, well, here's a pill and then goodbye. You know, there's counseling involved. There's ethics boards involved. Some people have to actually get approval for these processes to actually happen. Of course, we don't have that in the United States, and the laws on that actually vary state to state a little bit. But point is, we really actually don't advocate for that here too much. So I think in those kinds of extenuating circumstances, yes, absolutely. If you've lived a full life, you should be able to deal with it. The problem is, not everybody who wants to end their life has lived a full life. There's a lot of people who are suffering from mental illness, and mental illness can inform your decision making in ways that are not beneficial to you. And there are some people who say, well, if it wasn't for the treatment that I got, whether it be medication, therapy, or whatever, I would have ended my own life. And it's because of this medication or because of this treatment that I've made that change. So, you know, when someone says they want to end their own life, is it actually in their best interest? Is it something they might regret? I think in those circumstances, yes, right? If you are like under the age of like 80, right, and like you are having these thoughts, it might be best to like look into that, because I think most people would agree, right? Like if you can fix a problem that you're having, sometimes wanting to end your life is actually you saying, I have a problem that I don't think I can fix, right? So if we can like fix those problems, maybe people's decisions will be able to make that change. You know, like we use cancer as an example as what's acceptable, because that's a terminal illness that you can't actually fix, right? That's an intractable problem, at least currently. So that's where the ethics of this get thorny. But like I imagine, Enoch, that if an 18-year-old, for example, came up to you and said, I want to end my life, you'd probably want to prevent that. And I would too. I think that's a natural instinct for most of us. And I think ethically that's the best thing to do, is to help them prevent themselves from doing that and getting them the treatment they need. It's only in those intractable, extenuating circumstances that I think where I would flip it and say, no, actually, I think they do have a right to end their lives. Anyway, that's a long ass answer I gave. Zachary, go ahead.
I think that there is, like, philosophically, it's morbidly interesting, because I think a lot of people, when they hear suicide, they don't understand it fully. It's not a want to die, it is a want to not exist. And so usually when it comes to, I think one thing that influences is mental illness. So that should first and foremost be taken into account. Because someone who is not of sound mind does not have the capability to make such a huge choice, even morally speaking, especially in that regard. But let's see, well, not a but. Let's leave the but out of there. It's an interesting concept morally, because we need to get down to why murder itself, or killing someone is morally bad. Because the way at least I've thought about it is, you kill someone, they don't care, they're dead, but they do have people around them that do care. They have those relationships that are cut off just inexplicably, and it causes great pain here on Earth, in the living realm, where we still are. I think that's the main hangup that I have with the moral permissibility of suicide, because your decision now, even though you will cease to be a moral agent if you follow through in the near future, your choice still has those effects. And so we can still label you posthumously morally responsible for the damage that you have caused.
Right.
But the other thing is, I don't think we really have to worry about this, because people who are of sound mind, who want to go through with suicide, it is always in that medical case, whether someone has dementia and they want to not go through that degradation, or if they have a terminal disease like cancer and it will be painful and they just don't want to go through that. They don't want to have their family members see them deteriorate. This is one of those things that it's a fun thing to tease philosophically. But if we go back to the practical, there is no person of sound mind who pursues suicide for no reason. It is always because of something terminal that they don't want to suffer through.
Or just like they again, mental illness does play a role, and I think you can still be consistent in like disallowing somebody from committing that act. So like, for example, right, like when we talk about altered states, right, like if you are feeling suicidal, that's typically an altered state. That's probably not your a regular state for you. But like if I'm drinking, right, and I'm like really drunk, I should not drive a car. It doesn't matter that I have a car. It doesn't matter that I have a license. It doesn't matter that I could do it if I wanted to. Morally speaking, I shouldn't do it, right? Because I'm a danger to myself and also other people. When in that same line of thought, if you are in an altered state and you decide this is something you want to do, like that can also affect yourself, but can also affect other people, right? And like that's not to say that people don't have like baseline suicidal tendencies. I'm not even saying that either. But what I am saying is, most of the time that's treatable, right? Like most of the time there can be something that can be done about it. So, if it can be done, I feel like there should be a compulsion to be done about that.
And
But
I do
anyway,
have,
that's
I've got one more thing. There's I know that Enoch, the way you phrased it seemed to be a lot about choice and freedom to do something for which you had no control over before. But it sort of presents a paradox, because like I said, most people they follow suicide to cease to be. But whenever you cease to be, you cannot make choices. And so even though you did not choose to be in this world, if you choose suicide, you have essentially there's no more you, and you cannot choose. And so if the argument for the moral permissibility is that you want to have control over your own existence, to choose non-existence is to paradoxically remove yourself, or to take yourself out, or take away the ability for you to choose.
Yeah. A lot of thoughts from us, Enoch. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, good thoughts. Just a couple comments. I did want to comment on the one thing that Zach said about how if a person does that, like, you're causing harm, or you could cause indirect suffering to like people that love you and stuff. So, I mean, one analogy that I thought of is like, ultimately though, I feel like shouldn't that still be up to the person, because it's the person's choice. So for analogy, like if someone wants to, let's say I want to move to Europe, and all my family and everyone I know lives in Pennsylvania, and I decide I don't want to, I just want to move to Europe and I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm just leaving and bye, and I never see them again. I mean, that would suck for my family and everyone that loves me, because they're never going to see me again because I'm somewhere in Europe. But like, isn't it my choice if I want to do that? Isn't that like completely my choice that I can do that if I want, because it's my life?
Mhm. But the very fact that it is your choice means that you bear the moral responsibility for their suffering, whatever will result. And if you don't care about that, I mean, it's a little cruel. And I am no way, like, I hate this when people say that people who are suicidal are just selfish. I hate that. I despise that,
Mm,
because
right.
whenever you are suicidal, it's not even your choice. You do not want to be. It just happens that way. And I don't know the exact words to describe it. I'm not the psychologist here, but if you are of sound mind and you choose to do that, you do bear the moral responsibility, because it is wholly your choice in that case.
Well, I don't. So I mean, so I don't know. I actually might have a dissenting opinion here with you, Zachary. I actually think Enoch's reasoning is sound,
Mhm.
in the sense that, like, look, when you came out as an atheist, right? Like that hurt your family, but like, are you responsible for your family suffering because you made that decision for? I mean, like you ultimately you're still making the decision that's right for you. One, in telling them that, but also living your life in a way that's honest to yourself. Obviously, I think that argument for it's going to hurt other people, I don't think it's sound. I would instead, I'm still rebuffing your point in the sense that I agree with your position in that it should be prevented, but my reasoning is different. My reasoning is, again, I think if we're talking about uh, again, if suicide isn't actually the best solution for you, and you're actually trying to fix a problem that can otherwise be solved by other means, whether it be financial, whether it be mentally, whatever, like we should approach it that way, right? Because like it is a permanent solution to a problem that is potentially temporary. I know that's cliche to say,
Mhm.
but I think that's what happens when we think about the image of people who want to end their lives. It does. You can't deny that that is a significant portion of people. Some people are just completely happy with their life and they want to do it, and that's maybe an edge case, but I don't think that's the majority. I don't think that's what's happening. And of course, the other one being end of life scenarios, intractable scenarios of people who are going through something that can't actually be fixed.
Mhm.
And then I think, yeah, absolutely. I think you do have a right, full stop.
Mhm.
And yeah, was that going to cause suffering for other people? Yeah, it will. But you do have a right to do that. I do
Mhm.
think you can do it. But it's
Well,
it's messy. It's not
mhm.
super clear. I can't like get like one definite principle or another on it. It's just how I intuit the situation. But I
Mhm.
mean, that's what makes sense to me. And
Yeah.
anyway, Enoch, we're talking a lot again. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you made some good points there. I mean, I would mostly agree. I still do think though that like, I don't know, I get the sense that like, it's comes down to like a foundational, like basic autonomy thing. Like if you don't
Yeah.
have the right over your own self, like you brought up the example of like drunk driving, the reason why that is wrong is because you're endangering other people. Like if you were zero
Right.
danger to other people, then I would say, yeah, it would still be not smart if you're hoping to not get hurt because you're putting yourself at risk. But ultimately, if I want to, stick my finger in an electrical outlet, that's stupid, but it's my choice. And it's not morally
Yeah.
wrong for me to do that, even though it's stupidity. Essentially,
I
it would be my
yeah.
like thought on that.
And this is why I expressed a slight disagreement with Zach is because like I don't think it's morally wrong to commit that act.
Oh, I,
But that doesn't mean I endorse it.
I
Right?
need to
That's the difference.
I
Yeah.
need to
Go
slightly
ahead.
rephrase. I
Yeah.
didn't mean to say that it was morally wrong. I did mean to imply it's messy, but
Yeah.
whatever the outcome is, because it is your choice, you are morally culpable for your action. And so this
Mm,
is
mm.
to say that if it is morally permissible or if it's morally wrong, it doesn't matter. You are responsible for what happens. I guess that's sort of a roundabout way of answering the question, or just sort of not answering.
Yeah.
But if you're going for moral permissibility, it's messy, and that's something we're gonna have to think about. Well, I'll have to
Yeah.
think about for a long
That's
time.
that's the problem, right? Just because you have a right to do something doesn't mean you should do it. I like at the end of the day, if you were to tag me in a philosophical corner and you said, but doesn't this person have a right to end their life? Doesn't this person who isn't like experiencing anything particularly intractable, who isn't experiencing anything like, don't they still have a right at the end of the day? I would say yes. That doesn't mean I think they should do it, though. That doesn't mean I endorse that kind of decision, because, as I said twice now, I think like that there are problems that people think they can't solve, but they really can. They just don't have the resources to do it, right? Like they don't have the time or money to necessarily seek that mental health care. Maybe they don't have family members that support them. Like there are preventable situations to something like that, and I don't want people to make decisions that, I mean, they wouldn't regret, but the people around them would regret, in the sense that maybe they would say, oh, I mean, how many people have said, yeah, I wish I could have helped that person more, right? Like it's a sad thing, but it is complicated. But I still think that the United States in general, I just Googled it right now because I couldn't remember. There's only 10 states where physician-assisted suicide is illegal. I would like it to be all 50 personally. I think if you have a physician-assisted scenario, like that's okay. I think you should have a right to do it. But that's just my take, Enoch. Any final thoughts?
No, I think that's a good summary.
Great. Well, thank you for calling in on it. I know it's a crazy topic. You know what? We have some open lines right now, and I'm going to take advantage of this fact. Enoch, can I ask you, can you talk about your story just a little bit? I'm so curious now, because you were a Christian last time you talked to me. So, like, what happened, man? What's going
absolutely.
on?
Yeah, so I mean, just to sum it up is like as fast as I can. I was very serious, like fundamental Christian. My dad's a pastor. He taught me the Bible my whole life. I went to Bible college after high school, and then it was a while after I got back. All my life, like I assumed, like Christianity was true and it can't be wrong, and that was like my assumption. Like I believed that wholeheartedly. And then I finally got to the point where I was like, it's wrong for me to think. I was like, why do I think it's impossible to be wrong just because I grew up believing this? So then when I started calling into the shows, and what I said to myself was, I'm going to look at the evidence without the bias that it's impossible to be wrong. And as soon as I started doing that, basically, like, it was a slow process. But over time, I kept getting less and less and less confident that Christianity was true. And like I kept getting more and more questions and more doubts, and then it was like months and months. And I called into the atheist experience quite a few times, and finally I kept getting like, there were so many times where I hate when Christians say, you're an atheist because you want to sin and stuff and stupid stuff like that, because it's just so ridiculous. I so badly did not want to lose my faith. I so badly did not want to stop being a Christian, but I couldn't, like, over time, as I kept listening to the other side of the arguments and actually taking it seriously and not just listening it with the thought that I already know this is wrong before I even hear it. And when I did that, like, I slowly became less and less confident that Christianity was true, until finally I just reached the point where I was like, oh shit, I don't believe this anymore. And that was a horrible point that I reached, because then I didn't like talk to my dad about it till like towards the end, and then till like I was like already like on the fence, because I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to upset my parents, because I was like very involved in my church, and I taught Sunday school class. I was on the worship team. I did all, like, I was like, in my church, I was considered, I know it's like cliche, but like a super Christian, I was like the example for all the young people and, whatever and whatnot. So for me to become an atheist was like not good for Christianity, just not good. It just doesn't look good.
Damn. Yeah. So
Enoch,
I feel you.
It was a long road.
Keep going. Don't let me interrupt. Keep going.
Yeah. That was basically the end, but, basically just saying, it was a long road. It was rough. And it's taken me a while to like recover, because after that, like, I lost all my friends growing up were like from church. Yeah, I didn't know anything like outside of Christianity. All I wanted to do, like, for all my teen years was like full-time ministry. It was like the only thing I saw myself doing. And then I went to Bible college to go to ministry. And then it's funny because lots of people say like, oh, it was when I went to college and, I started learning that, that I learned, the stuff about Christianity, started having doubts. And I'm like, I went to a freaking Bible college and I still became an atheist. Like, what? Like, wow. That is ridiculous. So,
yeah, damn. I feel like I'm talking to a version of myself from like half a decade ago. Like I feel like I have such a similar parallel to your story. But what I think is key in your story too is this idea that you really didn't want to lose the faith. Like I think the most sincere former Christians will often say this because it's like it's terrifying.
Yeah.
It is actually terrifying. You are not prepared for the world of not having that faith, right? You are inculcated, if you're like me, you were inculcated from a young age that this is the world you're supposed to live in and this is what you're supposed to strive for. And suddenly you do a 180 and it's like, well, how do I even navigate this world now? What tools do I use to like figure things out? At least that was my experience. So, but like for me, and I think you feel the same way, it has to be a value of you want to believe in true things more than you want things to be comfortable, right? And like that is a sacrifice. And the sacrifice is sometimes your friends and your family don't want to talk to you anymore and they don't actually care. And you know what? Guess what? They weren't good friends. They weren't. That's something I had to tell myself. So I know it's true because if there are people that did stick around, and those are the ones that have been the best for me because they understood me as who I was as a person more so than what organization I was a part of or what faith I followed. To me, that has made my relationships more meaningful, and I hope you can do the same thing for yourself, Enoch. Because I promise you, it gets better. It sounds like things are getting better for you, but I know it's bumpy, man. I know it's bumpy. So thank you so much for choosing to share your story on the show with me. That was great. I love that.
Yeah, no problem.
Awesome. We'll let you go now, Enoch. But thanks again. I hope we can talk again sometime because I'd love to see where you're at in the future and what is going on with you. Because like I said, not every day I get to talk to folks who tell me that I was at least a part of your experience. And I understand it's not just me; it's everybody else at the ACA and your own journey. Really, it's you yourself that makes that decision. But yeah, really cool. Any thoughts on that, Zach? Before we move on.
I just wanted to ask. I didn't get to ask Enoch. I might have actually seen that episode with you and Matt. What was the topic? What was the topic that he called in on?
I honestly don't remember. I only remembered that because that was the last show I hosted with him, and that was like it was like February of 2020. It was also like right before shit hit the fan with COVID and stuff. Because that was like the last time. That was the last time I was in the studio too before things happened. But anyway, like yeah, crazy how that works. But you know, sometimes you talk to people and it's like, I bet this person is on their way out. And you don't say it because it's rude, but sometimes you get that feeling. I know people who have said that about me when they've seen my video as a Christian. So very interesting to see. But hey, before we get to some more calls, we have a promo that we have to show you guys. It talks about some of the other shows that we got going on. So check this out.
And I just had this horrendous day, this horrendous week, and I just flopped down in there and I'll stick on one of the reality TV shows on your over-the-top streaming service of choice, and I will just go, oh, I'm better than you.
It is said by those who know, if you walk beneath old Joe as its clock chimes, you shall fail your exams. So we did it on purpose and both of us passed.
It's almost been an episode of we've been bookended by religious nasties and had some quite cool people in the middle. It's been like a jerk sandwich with a lovely filling.
I'm not saying that I am instantly friends with every trans person or I have loads in common with every single trans, but there are people who are trans who that is the only thing we have in common. I hate them, but because we're both atheist and we're both trans, you know, we run in the same circles.
Which is the spiritual faculty of our heart, and logic itself is a created transcendental category created by God that we can communicate with through our spiritual energies.
That was enough word salad to end world hunger, literally.
And we are back to the program real quickly as well. Before we get to callers, I need to let you guys know you can donate directly to the ACA if you'd like to. We have a fundraiser that's on YouTube. 100% of the money goes directly to the ACA. YouTube does not take any of that. Today's goal is $420. Hope that's not too high for you. Anyway, thank you to everybody who donates. It really does help perpetuate the mission of the ACA. So very, very cool. Very, very cool. And with that, let's go ahead and talk to our next caller here. This is interesting. This is Kathy from Arizona. Kathy had some comments actually about the previous call that she wanted to make. Kathy, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
How cool is this? Hi. Okay.
What's up? How you doing? Yeah, it's cool talking to you, Kathy.
Good. How are you? Friday night.
Good,
yeah.
good.
Cool. All right. Let me mute the TV here. Hello, Zach. Hello, Dan.
Hello.
Awesome. Okay. So, okay, yeah, you were on this idea of the whole thing of owning your own life. I
Yes,
totally feel
very
that,
interesting
but,
topic.
Me personally. Yeah. Okay, so here's the deal, okay? I'm 62, okay? I am of relatively sound mind, but maybe debatable. Okay, I am on antidepressants, but I'm functional. Okay, but I've had my children. They're here. They're fine. They have their own families too. We're all good. My only surviving parent, my dad, just recently died. I have two brothers, and they're fine. They live in other states. Everybody's fine. And not that I'm thinking of doing this, but my idea about the whole, right to life thing is that extends to each of us, including me, owning the right to my own life. So I don't have a terminal illness. If something were to happen, next week, and both of my brothers were gone, and both of my children were gone, okay, and so I didn't feel like there was anybody really left here that would be hurt by my absence. I think that at that point, if I were to choose to not want to be here anymore, because I have felt that way more than once, just not want, that's exactly what it is. It's not wanting to be dead. It's wanting to not be, just not be, And it seems like that should be my choice as an adult individual with no dependents, and how I can see maybe, well, just even going to the medical field. That's an outside person, or the whole idea of having to go to the government and get their approval. It's like, since when does somebody else own my life? And that, that comes back to the bodily autonomy and, all that. So it's kind of all the same issue. So what do you guys think about that?
Kathy, I'm glad that you called, because I think I tried to enunciate on this point during the call, but I can always think of myself of doing a better job with this, right? Is that when you host long enough and you say, oh, people are like this, there's always an outlier. There's always people that are like this. And you're not the first person I've heard who is of, I'm going to say, allegedly sound mind, right? Who has an idea of what they'd like to do with their own life. It is a stereo. I mean, like, I use mental illness as an example because let's be real. That's pretty common, right? That's a pretty common reason why. It's because that, that comes up, but that isn't everyone. That certainly isn't everyone. And throughout history, you can see that a lot of people of otherwise sound, insane mind in history who have decided to end their own life because they thought it was the best decision for themselves. And when I say this, again, being very clear, philosophically, I find it very hard to disagree with that. I find it very hard to push against that and say, you don't actually have a right to your own life and to your own body. How can I? On what grounds can I do that? I really can't. Again, when I say I would prevent somebody, and I use the example of if some 18-year-old came to me and said that they were depressed and life wasn't going great for them and they wanted to end their own life, I wouldn't say, okay, yeah, go for it. Here, let me help you out. I wouldn't do that, right? I would try to get them help because that's somebody who needs help. There's some people who do need help. And Kathy, I hope if anything happens to your family, if anything happens to the people that you love, that you also would get help first before you decide to make that decision for yourself, right? But at the same time, if you have gotten help,
don't trip. This is not a suicide hotline call. I'm okay. This is
I assume so as much. This would be a very different call otherwise. But like, I get what you're saying though, right? It's like, does that mean the government has to regulate and decide when you get to do that for yourself. I find that
Because
hard
I
to.
understand that what happens if you attempt suicide and you fail, they put you in the hospital, right? They basically do lock you up for 7 days or some shit, right?
Yes.
So I mean, there's that. And again, that's supposedly for your own good, and I get that. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's more the philosophical point of it, question of it. Because interestingly, when someone, when Robin Williams killed himself, when all of these, Chris Cornell, there's a number of, vocalists from all the grunge era that have all committed suicide. And I always feel sad. I don't ever feel like, oh, good for you, you got away. That's not how I feel about them, So I get the whole, I get the, it's sad that they missed the rest of their life kind of thing. But from a personal standpoint, as I think each individual should have the right from their personal standpoint. Again, I have rules about it, which would be, you have to be of an age where no one is dependent on you anymore. Or maybe, you can't be under 18 or something because you haven't even tried for your potential. But, if you're 35 and you got, 10 and 7-year-old kids, no, you need to be here. You have a responsibility now. You need to be here. But if you reach the point in your life where you don't have that responsibility, and theoretically there's nobody around that would even really miss you, you should have the option to opt out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the end of, that's,
I think I agree with you. I think I agree with you, Kathy, because this is why I advocate or why I am a proponent, I would say, of physician-assisted suicide, because it's kind of like someone who struggles with addiction is able to, like if they have a heroin addiction, they should be able to go to a clinic and get heroin, because like that's the best thing they can do, right? If someone is going to end their life, I would want them to do it in a way that is actually like literally the safest. And I know that sounds funny because they're ending their own life, but what if you try to end your life and you don't do it successfully, and you do it in a way that, you can do it in a way that permanently paralyzes you or worse, right? Like you can do it, you can hurt other people. And that is a situation I'd like to avoid. And also typically, as it is in countries like Sweden, places like there is an application process, and like you do see like counsel, like you do talk to people before it happens. And I would be a proponent of that. But yeah, it sounds counterintuitive to the human experience to want to give people that right, but it is a right. I do think it is a right. And obviously legislation on it is murky, but like it should be accessible in some form. I don't think it should be for every single person that wants to do it, but it should be there, right? Anyway, I'm talking a lot. Zach, what do you think?
No, that's no, you brought up that the one case, my only hang up was the existence of dependents, or people that are emotionally dependent on you, or people that have ties to you that you would be inexplicably cutting off. And that was, as far as I could see, the only grounds, the only basis in even considering it an immoral act. But in the case that you provided, I can't really say that it's immoral. I can probably just say permissible. Moral or permissible, that's up to you, but the entire grounds for immorality has been stripped away in that case. So you are of sound mind, as Dan said, allegedly, and you are stripped of what brings you happiness, and there's no way to repair it. And so it would just be the exercise of what you consider best for you. I do say it's not the pursuit of well-being. It is the pursuit of stopping a lack of well-being. I guess that's the best way to put it. And so in the case that you provided, I would definitely say, that's definitely morally permissible.
But I do think, Kathy, I do think, again, want to emphasize, I do think if the situation which you described happened to you, and like you felt like there was a discrepancy between the people that you loved in your life and like your will to live, I think that is still a thing that can be helped. I do think it can be. I think obviously there's feelings of despondency in that moment, but like I do think through time and through resources like that, that is still something that can be helped. And so like, again, I know you're not saying, oh, this is something I'm going to do, but like, I know it's a thought exercise. And with that thought exercise in mind, I still just want to make sure everybody knows exactly what I'm saying. This is a very sensitive topic. And we have to treat it with the nuance and respect that it deserves. I read a book on this like a few years ago that really blew my mind on some of the statistics on this, and also just the legal processes that happen in countries that have do have a right for like all their citizens. A lot of checks in place to make sure that people are doing it right, and that's what I'm interested in. But anyway, Kathy, a lot of thoughts from us. Any other thoughts from you?
Well, like probably, the countries, I'm thinking Sweden maybe, where they might have resources, right? Where if you're feeling like this, you have places to go and such.
Correct.
And I'm guessing they probably have, a much lower instance of things like homelessness. I mean, like that's the thing that's the only thing that I could see maybe happening in my life. I have children, and they wouldn't let that happen to me. But if I was dying in the world to the point where I was going to live on the street, I would end it. I would find a way to be gone, and that seems legit to me.
Again, I go back to this too, though, Kathy. It's like that,
so
like
hopeful.
homelessness is
wonderful.
Homelessness is a material problem that can be solved, right? Like that's a material thing, like that's a result of policy, okay, in this country. That hopefully it would never happen to you, but like I don't think someone being homeless is a justification enough. Like that seems like that can be solved, I mean, I get it happens, but it's hard. I wouldn't say, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like I mean, I wouldn't say it wouldn't make sense. It does make sense, but it wouldn't be something I would say, okay, yeah, I think that, this person's made their decision and we should just let them be. I would say, if I heard that scenario, I would say, no, we need to make sure this person has material, resources that can help.
Well, I mean, then there's a whole other thing we could do there. I mean, because look, really, right now, I'm good. I'm fine. I'm safe. I have my house. Yeah. I'm good. But there are thousands of people right now, cold on the street right now.
I know.
Because. Yeah. And so that's why I brought that up, because it's real. It is real. There are people that had a house and were fine a year ago that are out there on a sidewalk right now. And that was just kind of an idea for me of how things could go that bad for me without it being some kind of an illness situation.
Yeah.
It would make me want to end it, and it would be that.
I agree.
Without resources, So anyway, okay, I don't want to take up any more time. I'm so happy that I got to talk to you guys, and I appreciate it so much. And I'm going to live on YouTube.
Okay. All right. We've been having a little bit of connection issues here with you, Kathy, but I appreciate that you are calling in as well. Again, this is such a... I hope I don't read in the comments later and people saying like, oh man, you guys really fucked up this topic. I mean, like, I've been curious about this before. I've read some literature on it, but it's been a few years. Like I'm not up to date on, this debate, but like, I still feel pretty strongly about the positions that I hold. And like, I'm really glad Kathy called, because again, that is a perspective that exists, and the nuance out there needs to be addressed. That no, it's not always just mental illness that does influence it. Yeah. Is it a factor in a lot of people? Of course. Sometimes it's other non-tangible things, and sometimes it's material things, and like the material things can be addressed. Other things, we may not have the medical technology to deal with properly. But anyway, Zach, any more thoughts on that before we move on? Because it's getting heavy. It's a heavy, heavy night. I'm sorry, you were not prepared. For
no, I was
topic,
waiting for some angry theist to call in about how we're going to hell. This is not what I was expecting.
Yeah.
But I guess the last thing I bring in, it's a little bit more philosophical, but I brought up sort of that idea of the paradox of freedom. And essentially the argument is it's wrong to deprive someone of that choice if they do want to cease to be. But but it necessarily follows that the only person, if you follow through, that's depriving you of choice is yourself. And it's a really interesting, like, that's the only argument that I could see for it being immoral. If you want to start on the basis of depriving someone of choice is immoral, you would be depriving yourself of choice. But that's the thing, is that if you abide by that and you end up following that and obeying your own command not to choose to do it, you've also suspended yourself of choice. So it's sort of it's this sticky situation. It's a paradox of choice.
It is a paradox.
Yeah, it's really, it's a tricky thing.
I want to help people that we can help.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I summarize this,
I do want to iterate. This is hypotheticals. Like these cases that we're talking about are few and far between, and
but they
this
are
is
real.
Like, yeah, they're real.
Okay, they
but
do happen.
It's one of those things, is when you test a moral or an ethical framework, how well it survives on the fringes, and what comes out from the fringes is usually the wonkiest parts, and that's what we're looking at right now. Is we're looking at the fringes.
Yeah, for sure. Fringes, but more common than what people would think as well, I would say. With that, really quickly, I need to talk about what's happening at the ACA studio. As you know, we are committing to doing at least one live show for each of the shows per month, and that is happening at the last day of that show is usually on of the month. So next Friday is going to be a live Truth Wanted. I am going to be hosting that with good, awesome person Kelly, who's going to be in studio with me for that. Kelly Lalvin, who's driving in from way far away to come in for that. So that should be fun. Doors will open at 6:00 for that. If you want to come see this show live, I'm also going to be on Talk Heathen this Sunday, January 29th for that. So definitely look at that and put that on your calendars if you want to see me. I'm gonna be hosting with the Mostin. Actually, no, I'm sorry, I messed that up. I'm actually hosting Talk Heathen this weekend. I'm not going to be in studio next week, but I will be in studio next month for Talk Heathen. I guess I can put that out there. So I don't know who's going to be in studio next week, but it's going to be cool. You should definitely go check. Or sorry, I don't know who's going to be hosting this weekend, because it's not going to be in studio this weekend, but next weekend it is going to happen. Anyway, I kind of flubbed that announcement a little bit, but that's okay. You guys get what I'm saying. Also, really quickly, want to tell you guys how you can email the show. You can email the show. It's truth@atheist-community.org. You can also reach out to the ACA at tv@atheist-community.org and see what's going on our website at, guess what? It's atheist-community.org. So check that out. And also, there is a Facebook group. It's run by fans for fans. You can go to tiny.cc/ I just lost the link. Oh, tiny.cc/FBTWG to interact with other fans. So look at that if you haven't already, and talk to some other folks that like the show. Okay, so I think we got time for just one more call. We're going to sneak this one in. We got Kennita, I think. Please tell me if I'm mispronouncing your name. Kennita calling in from California. What's up?
Hi, I'm calling about this whole suicide thing. It's like,
man, yeah, this is 3 in a row here. It's crazy.
Every creature since the beginning of life has been all about being alive.
Yeah.
What is this that humans have got going on where suddenly we're going against the biological imperative to be alive? I don't think, any other creatures do that.
Well, actually, I don't know, Kennita, because think about this, right? Like, if you've ever had a domestic animal die, like a cat or a dog, and they know that they're dying, they're sometimes displaying those signs of wanting to be, or if they know that they're sick, right? Like, there are signs that they will want to move away from the rest of the pack a bit, right? Kind of find a space for themselves to kind of handle that death, right? I mean, like, I guess at that point you could say they're at the end of their life, but sometimes that just happens when they're sick. I don't know. I'm not an expert on this. I wonder if there's any No, I do know this. I think it's been observed before in primate populations. Depression in primates, and I think suicidal tendencies have also been expressed in primates. I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure I've heard that before. But maybe that's just also, I mean, if it's primates, right? Maybe that's a result of our evolution, our overdeveloped brains not dealing with the world properly. I don't know. What do you think, Zach?
Well, I want to start. I have my little notepad here, and I wrote down 1, 2 for the first call, and then I wrote down 1 for the call following, and I scratched it out and wrote a 3. So now I have to scratch out my next number 1 and write a 4. All right. So I do think that it's that sort of overload. I've never heard of a dog having an existential crisis. So,
well, maybe not existential crisis, but like will go away from things that could potentially help them because they think they're done. I don't know if that was a good example, actually. I think I'm gonna hang my hat on the primate thing because I'm
that's I looked it up. It's, at least from what I found on the front page of Google, the wonderful source that it is that there's nothing super conclusive. Of course, there are social animals that will stop eating in times of stress and grief, but that's a pretty common thing that's seen. And then ant colonies, ants will sacrifice themselves for the colony. I know that happens. But besides that, there's not. But I do think that, well, since Dan, you said it might have been observed in primates, or it was observed in primates, maybe it is sort of unique to humans, but I'm not exactly sure. I don't really have the authority to speak on the topic, so I'm sort of trying to stay a little bit away from it. I'm just a layman in this case.
Yeah, we should also say we're just 2 dudes on the internet, and anything that we've said today is just the opinion of 2 dudes of the internet, not 2 physicians or 2 professional philosophers or 2 anything really. I mean, just call-in show hosts, which is the lowest credibility on the credibility ladder. Anyway, Kennita, your thoughts on this?
Well, I was also wondering if they were, people have talked about overcrowding, and there maybe being too many humans for the ecosystem to support, and maybe it would be another one of those for the good of the whole, occasionally they're trying to sort of cull people who don't want to be here anyway. So they get overcrowded.
I think that's BS because I think even before human beings reached a population of 8 billion, there's been people that have been wanting to end their own lives. So like, I think at any point in recorded history, you could probably find suicidal ideation, right, from human beings. So I don't know. That seems like that reminds me of when people are like, oh, being gay developed as an evolutionary thing to make sure to prevent overpopulation and to share resources. I mean, like maybe just like it was just a mutation that happened. I don't know. Sometimes we put an overemphasis on narrative stories in evolutionary biology that I think sort of oversells what's actually there.
Yeah, and I'd warn away from the of sticking to the idea of overcrowding. There are places that have extremely high population densities that should probably be spread out a little bit more for like logistics and disease sake. But that the whole thing that, oh, there's too many people on the world, that is a eugenics talking point, because who do we get rid of? Well, if you ask a Malthusian, I'm always hesitant. Yeah, I mean, there is overpopulation in some areas where there's like a high density, but I think the Earth's human population is expected to top out around 10 billion. Our population growth is already slowing down a little bit. It follows a specific curve, and it's been pretty to the line right now. So I think that we don't have to really worry about that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, any other thoughts on that, Kennita?
No, I think that, if you just say that people who want to kill themselves are, they basically, you want mostly to make sure that they're not just depressed before you just hand them okay, get out of life free card, right?
Yes. Yes. In other words,
Because
again.
the people that they leave behind are the ones who suffer.
And
they might not even know who all those people are. You know, I'm thinking of It's a Wonderful Life, right? There are people who don't even know what effect they're having on the world around them. So, don't presume that you know everything.
Yeah, that's true.
Just because it's not your wife or your kids, the people that you work with and the people you see on your way to work on every day, these people might say, wow, it's really great to see, this person when I go to work every day, and they would miss you. So
yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
And the thing is too.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kennita. Go ahead. I'll let you finish.
I was saying that, I am sort of an anti-suicidist. Whenever anybody brings up the topic, I usually just go, I don't bloody think so. I would just as soon live 150 years or 400. If we figure out how to get rid of all these ridiculous diseases that take us out, I'll live as long as, I can think of fun things to do. But when you're depressed, you can't think of any fun things to do. So it's just a matter of having lost sight of how vast the possibilities are.
Yes, I think depression does cloud your judgment, right? Depression doesn't make you think completely rationally. As someone who, if I'm honest, still has depression going through it right now, like that is definitely something I have to remind myself every day. And I think what's, I guess, sad, but maybe reflects an honesty about our society, is that I bet, Kennita, you can say this about yourself. I know I can say this, Zach. I bet you can say this. I think we all know people who have at least considered the thought of ending their own life, right? I think it's a common enough phenomenon now, especially in the United States, where we probably all know somebody who has. And if we're also being honest, probably know people who have gone through with that and would deeply regret that, right? Like, none of us want that for people who could have otherwise not have done that, right? And even as somebody like myself, who is a proponent for a right to die, a right to end your own life, there's still very, very specific extenuating circumstances where I would be okay with that. Again, anybody who's going to come to me and say that, hey, this is what I'm thinking, I'm going to take that as a cry for help. If they're telling me, if they wanted to do it, they would do it. People who talk about it, maybe they want something else, right? But they don't know how to figure out how to solve that thing. Again, not a licensed therapist. I'm not anything. I'm just a dude. But I will do my best to help them out the best way that I can with at least the techniques I know, and get them to the people that can help them the best. Because I'm anti people making decisions that they otherwise wouldn't make under better circumstances, right? Like that's what I think we should all be. But I hear you, Kennita. It is a difficult thing to wrestle with, right? And a very sensitive thing. And something I have to keep in mind when we've had very different perspectives of people calling in today. Everybody who watched this show has probably a very different and nuanced perspective based on their own life experiences that we always have to keep in mind. But I think we're on the same page for the most part, right? Anyway, Kennita, was there anything else that you want to say before we wrap it up?
Living in general is good. Yeah.
Living in general
is good.
Yeah. That's an interesting philosophical proposition. There are some people that do say that living is suffering, but maybe that's a topic for a different time. We do have to wrap things up because we are over time for tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for calling in and sharing your thoughts with me on that. Zach, I keep prompting you here after these calls because I talk all the time, but please tell me any other thoughts.
None that I can think of. I mean, we sort of went over the bases again of as it pertains to family. It's like I had a friend that I knew in high school, and he went through with it, and so I have some experience of the effects that it has on people, and so that's where a lot of my perspective on that comes in, and that's why that is my greatest consideration for the morality of suicide is knowing what happens afterwards.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I was, you might have noticed my eyes going to the side here. I was trying to Google because I read this interesting essay from a philosopher I'd never heard of before, a Norwegian guy from like 100 years ago, who was talking about existence being how absurd existence is, and how he was one of the rare philosophers that actually did talk about how he thought that killing themselves was the most ethical thing you could do for yourself. Very, very startling essay. I didn't get the chance to read it. I was going to try to find it, but I can't here. But the point is, the diversity on these perspectives is interesting. The more you look at it, you really think that people think the same way that you do about it until you talk to other folks about it. But man, we have spent a long time on this subject, more so than we typically do for single subjects. And again, I want to thank everybody for calling in and being honest and being real about such a big issue. But we do got to wrap things up. Zach, I want to thank you for being on the show tonight, and getting the chance to host again. This is two times for you, so really glad you got to be back on. If people want to find you or learn more about what you're doing, where can they go for that?
I don't have any socials where I do stuff like this, so I just redirect them to the SSA homepage at utsa.edu. I think you can find the group link there. But I don't have anything so far. I'm probably going to be starting a YouTube channel because I enjoy doing stuff like this a lot, and it's always fun to discuss these topics.
Cool.
And it is within my field of study too.
Oh yeah, well, with physics, you mean?
Oh no, with philosophy, because it is.
Oh yeah, with philosophy, right? Because you're minor. Yeah, I almost forgot about that part. Yeah. No, that's it. It is really interesting that you get to share your perspective when you're going to school for that. I did not go to school for that, but I do talk about it a lot, which is really weird. But real quickly too, before we end tonight's program, a couple of things I want to mention. We are actually going to be on Discord after the show, so definitely check that out if you want to come talk to us. tiny.cc/ACD Discord. We're doing the Discord after show stuff again. So if you're watching and you want to come hang out with us for a bit, stick around. Also, I did not do this earlier, but I want to talk about some of the merchandise that we have. The link for that is tiny.cc/merch-ACA, and we got the t-shirts, we got the hoodies, we got the mugs, and of course our monthly shirt is one that I suggested the design for it. I'm always biased towards those. It says I was abducted by aliens, and all I got was this t-shirt, classic cheese that I just love, I adore. So thank you for showing that graphic crew. And of course I need to thank the wonderful, awesome, amazing, spectacular, stupendous crew that helps make this show happen every single week. And there they are. Oh, they're rocking the Truth Wanted swag tonight too. God dang, look at that. Look, that's what you could look like that if you want to. Okay, you have the opportunity. You have the choice. Check out that merch store if you haven't already. Once again, Zach, I want to thank you as well for being on. I stopped doing this for a bit, but I need to get back on this. Zach, do you have any words of wisdom before we close out tonight's show?
Well, I can't think of any right now, especially for the topic that we were working with. The only thing I would say is that it is something to think about, but it is a big decision. So if you are in a bad place, I've been there. I've had friends that have been there, and I can say that eventually, as time goes on, and after you think about it for a little bit, you will come to realize it is better here.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you for that. Thank you again to everybody. I'm Objectively Dan. Remember to always keep wanting the truth, and I'll see you next time.
Watch The Non-Prophets and join the hosts in the live chat, Sundays at 3 p.m. Central, between the Atheist Experience and Talk Hidden. Visit tiny.cc/YTNP.